Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I'm Canuga Combs, a lifetime bike enthusiast. I like to ride them and I like to work on them. Today I'm going to talk about the screen of death. This is part one of a four-part series. So the first series will deal with why you have the problem and some pretty standard ways to fix the screen of death. The second part, or the second video of this series of four, will deal with how to thoroughly analyze and determine the exact problem for the screen of death. The third video, or part three of four, will be a video which talks about the standard way to fix the problem based on the analysis. And then the final part, or part four, video number 4 of 4, will deal with an alternative fix that I found out that some people are implementing to fix a screen of death based on what I found in the analytics. So let's get to it. Basically, I got my bike out of my van and I was all ready to ride. I got on the bike, mashed the button, and the bike would not power up. So at that point, I was pretty jazzed about it. And, at the trailhead, I did what little bit I could to try to get the bike going, took the battery out, reinserted it, messed around, mainly fumed around a lot, and ultimately determined that I needed to put the bike back in the van and take it home, which I did. And once I got it home, I began to, try to figure out how to resolve the screen of death, which I'm going to go into here. But before we go any further, we're going to be, talking about doing some stuff with the bike which can expose you to some high voltages. So you need to exercise a great deal of caution, and you should not try these procedures unless you have the appropriate electrical experience. This is probably not the things you want to do to introduce yourself to electrical work. As I'm showing in number 1, the battery itself is high voltage. There's a risk of shock and a risk of arcing. I'm showing in number 1 the tag on the battery, and as you can see, it's 48 volts. Not anything to be messed around with. You certainly don't want to shock yourself or create some type of electrical arc from messing around with a 48 volt battery. The second thing to be aware of that's probably less obvious, and that is that the motor capacitor, stores energy, and when the battery's removed from the bike, there's still a high risk of shock or a risk of arcing, because that battery does retain a pretty high voltage, or that motor does retain a pretty high voltage. I'm showing in number 2 where I attached alligator clips to the male battery connector pins in the bike, and connected, as I'm showing in 3, those alligator clips to my multimeter. And even with the battery out of the bike, I'm registering 42.9 volts. So, you definitely don't want to shock yourself or cause some type of electrical arcing from messing with the motor when the battery's out of the bike. So just exercise a high degree of caution here, as we proceed. But basically, there are 2 primary reasons for the screen of death on a Dengfu e10. The first is you can get bent battery connectors from a loose battery. As it moves around inside the bike, it can slightly bend the pins, bend them enough over a period of time so that there won't be a good connection, and that will turn the motor off and, basically cause a screen of death. The second is corrosion and dirt on the battery connectors. Now, the first reason where the connectors can get bent from a loose battery moving around as the bike is ridden, I did another video showing the details of this, but just to briefly summarize, the battery connectors, need to be adjusted because the loose battery, like I said, will bend them open. And I'm showing in step number 1 here, I'm going in and taking a razor blade and wedging it against the female battery connector pin slots. And once you get that wedged in, you stick a small screwdriver and very gently, bend the pin slot over a little bit. And you do that on all 4 of the pin slots, and that will give you a better connection. And sometimes that alone will resolve the screen of death. The second is that the interface or connection between the battery and the e-bike is exposed. Even though there's a battery cover, the battery cover is not adequate for keeping dirt, grime, and moisture out. And repeated exposure will lead to corrosion. And I'm showing in slide number 1 on the left here where dirt just comes up from the wheel and goes on the bottom of the down tube. In number 2, this is a picture of the bottom of the down tube, and as you can see, the yellow highlighting is where the battery cover gap is, and that battery cover gap is just constantly pounded from dirt, grime, and moisture coming up from the wheel. And because it's not a really tight fix, there will be dirt and grime and moisture that's going to get inside there. And as I'm showing in number 3, that dirt, etc., will get down right where the battery connects to the e-bike. And so that over a repeated period of time, will just cause there to be a less than optimal connection to the bike. And I'm showing in this picture what dirty contacts look like. In number 1, you can see the copper cups. It's not really clear here, but those are fairly grimy and dirty. And then the female battery connector pins in picture number 2, you can see that they have quite a bit of dirt on them. And those had been cleaned, I want to say maybe, 75 miles prior to this picture. But over that period, they got quite a bit of dirt on them just from coming up and dust and dirt getting up inside the battery. So, the step to try to resolve this is I had some electric motor contact cleaner, and using a Q-tip, I went in pictures 2 and 3 and, cleaned the male battery connector pins and cleaned out the copper cups. Also, I used a milk carton to give me a little bit of, firmness there, and put a damp rag that had some of the contact cleaner inside those female battery connector pin slots, and, tried to get good and clean inside there, as I'm showing in pictures 2 and 3. And then, I felt like I had the copper cups very clean. I had the female battery connector pin slots clean. I had the male battery connector pins cleaned. And at that point, I felt like I had a pretty good shot of eliminating the screen of death. However, these steps did not solve the problem. As I'm showing in this picture, I'm mashing on the button trying to get the bike to start, and it wouldn't start. I still had the screen of death. So at that point, I knew I had to dig into the problem a lot more thoroughly to diagnose the problem. And in the next series, or the next part of these videos, part 2 of 4, I'm going to go in and show the detailed diagnosis of the problem, of what I did to identify the problem so that I could figure out how to fix it. So I hope I've given you guys something to think about, and I'll see you at the top.